What's up, Barflies? Welcome into the post-game show, Bear Football. I'm pulling the strings tonight with our guy Aldo at the game. As you just saw, we waited because we didn't want to be scoreboard watching on the show, so we waited to ensure that the Houston Texans and Lovie Smith gave us one little gift right before the end of the year. The Chicago Bears now have the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft. I'm fired up, guys. We were talking off air that game was more exciting than anything that we watched in the Bears game today. I'm Danny Shimon, you're our draft guy, man. What's going through your head right now?
I'm thinking, guys, should we change the name of the show today from Bear Football to Draft on Tap right now? Just to go transition right into it right now.
Well, I think this was a perfect segue into that. Like, we are officially in draft season, and what better way than to watch? Listen, I didn't watch as much as the Bears game as I did the Texans and the Colts game. I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. And I know all of our listeners and viewers are just waiting for our breakdown of Tim Boyle's performance today. But the more important part at hand here is that the Bears got the number 1 overall pick. And now the sky's the limit with the flexibility there, Danny. What do you, and we can go around the horn here, but what's your reaction to that?
Well, I was talking to you guys earlier. I'm like, look at Tyler. Tyler's making me laugh right now. But yeah, I mean, for me, it was like, all right, I was more excited. My heart was racing to see the end of that Colts game. But yeah, I mean, for me right now, I'm praying that one of these teams, these quarterback needy teams, falls in love with one of these quarterback prospects. And I'm from Ryan Poles. Hey, man, my phone lines are open. Come give me the best offer. The Bears can really do a great job of kind of, energizing and recharging or super boosting, whatever you want to call it, their rebuild here, and just load up with draft picks, and not only in this class, but also in next year's as well. So definitely looking forward. But the key is one of these quarterback needy teams falling head over heels for one of these quarterbacks, because typically that's the kind of guy you go up and get in these kind of situations is a quarterback. So we'll see what happens, but it's exciting now for sure.
Gaines.
Yeah, I agree.
Gaines.
Brother Gaines is celebrating.
I'm ready to listen, man. I was double fisting until I crushed it, John. I was double fisting. But happy Sunday, everybody. If you're joining us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, we appreciate you guys spending time with us. I'm freaking excited. I mean, we've been talking about it all season. Danny saying how this was the real rookie season for Justin Fields, 64 yards away from breaking the single season rushing record. I'm freaking excited because now it's time for no excuses. I mean, when you talk about a brand new regime being set up for success, we're gonna find out how good of a GM Poles can be, and what position has a head coach stepped into. We're talking about not even just the draft picks, but as Danny John and AC know, shout out to my man AC, Bar Flight Tailgate Show in the building. My man. Every freaking Sunday. That's my man right there. You already know. But John, over 100 million cap space. I'm just excited to see what we'll strategically do. You can't mess this up, right, John?
Oh, don't say that.
No, you can't. You can't mess it up. That's the thing. Is if they mess this up, the situation they have laid out this offseason, it'll take the franchise back 5 years.
I'm trying to mess it up right here.
Yeah, listen, that cash doesn't spend itself. Those draft picks don't make themselves. They got to get this right. And I mean, and like I said earlier this week, now Ryan Poles got exactly what he wanted. He can make this team the way that he wants to make it. They tore this thing down to the bare studs, but it's no more of blaming Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy now. Every move they make is going to be under intense scrutiny, and rightfully so, because we had to go through this growing pain year of the rebuild. But now, every signing you make, every draft pick you make, everything that you do moving forward is going to be under the microscope. And if it fails, it's on you. There's no one else to blame other than the GM, the coaching staff, the front office, whatever. It's on them now. We're not going to blame the ghosts of the past now because they're flush with cash. They're flush with draft picks. They got the number 1 overall pick that they can potentially turn into a treasure trove of other picks. You got to make it work now. It's on you now. AC, we were talking about this before we went on air. It's just like, there's so much flexibility with that pick. What are you looking to do?
I mean, I want to move it. We talked a lot this morning's show about the Colts possibly trying to come up and get a quarterback. And if they can give us their 2nd round pick along with it, you're not hurting as much with that draft pick that you traded away to bring in Claypool. You get future assets. And who knows, maybe they throw in DeForest Buckner and we get our 3 technique as well. I mean, just there's so much flexibility. But yeah, the Colts is what I got my eye on for them trying to jump the Texans and draft a quarterback over them. But who knows? I mean, I definitely don't want to sit here at 1.
But the flexibility is so big, guys. I mean, I want to just kind of reach over here and next to my partner and grab his drink and just have a chug right now because I'm thinking, Colts are awesome option there, AC. But how about the Raiders? The Raiders and maybe Devontae Adams could be in that package because you have the money to take on his contract. I don't know if he has a no trade or anything like that. But I'm just saying, like, the options are just going to be so wide, so open now in terms of teams and players and draft capital and all that stuff. But again, you don't want to fall too far down as well. So you got to keep teams within that, I'd say 6-7 range maybe,
top
because
five. Top five.
A top 5 would be ideal. But again, it's like you're gonna have to kind of the farther you drop down, the more you're gonna get. So you have to kind of weigh, both all those scenarios there. But again, just one of these teams has to fall in love with one of these quarterbacks, and the Bears can be sitting real pretty there.
Danny, quick question for you. So you make some. We've been waiting. God, we made it. We've been waiting all season to talk about it. Now we can finally talk about it. And so, Danny, we all know. Let's be real. The Chicago Bears right now are not contenders. They can scrap with some good teams, but we all know they don't have the talent. So how far? I don't mind. Hey, a double trade, like go to number 2, then go to number 3, right? Why not?
Sure, yeah.
Why not multiple draft picks? But Danny, we need generational talent. I don't think there's anybody haven't studied the draft yet, but we've talked about D tackle. We've talked about the front 7. We talked about offensive line. I don't want to go down too far that we now have question marks when we're in prime position to have generational talent. Like, the goal is to win the Super Bowl. That's the goal. We don't want to draft high for the sake that we drafted high. We want to win our division. Look at what the Eagles have done. Look at what the Lions are doing. They're competitive. They're playing competitive football. And so, Danny, the thoughts on not going down too far instead of getting a high grade talent player. Are we want a bunch of good guys, or we do want that one elite with a bunch of good guys?
Well, go ahead, John.
No, I was going to say, if there is the possibility that if the Texans are in love with one of these quarterbacks, that you could trade to 2 and then trade back to another quarterback needy football team, and then we just wait for the sequel to draft day to come out based on Ryan Poles. But I think that there's a lot of quarterback hungry teams that are still pretty high up. I mean, you're going to have the Texans, you're going to have the Seahawks, you're going to have the Colts, you're going to have, I mean, I don't know if the Lions, the Saints are going to be there, the Falcons are going to be there, the Panthers, I don't know if they love Sam Darnold. I mean, there's plenty of real players there in the top 10 that would love to jump up to number 1, or if you trade back to 3, you would love to trade back up into 3, and all of a sudden you have a big pool of assets there. So the possibilities here, I know we're going to get really excited and we're going to get ourselves lathered up for the next 3 months or 2 months trying to figure out what they're going to do with that. And they could trade this very quickly if some team comes up and says, we'll give you 3 first-round picks. But once again, we're being a little overzealous, but I love that because this is the most excited we've probably been on a post-game show for quite some time. And it comes off of, we didn't even pay attention to the Bears game. We paid attention to the Texans and the Colts. And quite frankly, the Colts did themselves a favor because now they prevented the Texans from probably choosing the quarterback that they really wanted at number 1. In fact, if they really wanted that, or they're going to make them work a little bit for it if that's the case. So the Colts kind of got what they wanted. The Texans did not get what they wanted, even though they won the ball game. And of course, the Bears get what they get. There's so many things that like we could be looking back on this in 5, 6, 7 years and think, remember the difference between the 1 and the 2 pick? Remember the Jets won that meaningless game a couple years ago, and it was the difference between getting Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson? Or remember for our older viewers, the coin flip between the Steelers and the Bears that decided where Terry Bradshaw was going to go? Like, these positions mean things. There's importance slotted between 1 and 2, and it can make all of the difference. So we'll see, and we're going to have to let this all play out. And I know no one wants to get there. We just want to speculate right now, and I love that. I love speculation. I love prognosticating, and I love all this stuff that we're going to be talking about for the next couple months. But there's the fact that they got the number 1 pick is I didn't think there was a chance, and in fact, I had to apologize to Louis Riddick on Twitter because he said the Bears were going to be the worst team in the NFL back in August, and I was like, "What? Absolutely no way!" I'm like, "Well, he was right. I was wrong." But as if anyone's ever listened to one of my shows, you know that I'm wrong about everything, so that's pretty par for the course. But this is a really exciting moment, as much as you can for a 3-14 ball club. This is about as exciting as it can get. And listen, it's not like they were awful all year. They had 8 1-possession games. So right. I mean, it's not like they were getting absolutely embarrassed every week. They're going to be able to reload. They're going to be able to spend cash. They're going to be able to use some of this draft capital. So going into the offseason, AC, I'll start with you. How excited as far as like compared to other off seasons? How afraid, how excited, how happy are you?
Well, it's the most excited I've ever been. As a Bears fan, the only quarterback that I've believed in a little bit was Jay Cutler. But now I've got Justin Fields, who I fully believe in, and we have the number 1 overall pick that we don't have to use on a quarterback. We can load up. I'm really excited. And we got all the assets we need. We got all the money, the most in the entire league. And then if you load up draft picks, and we saw what Ryan Poles did with his limited draft picks last year. He was able to move up and down the draft board and select guys and continue moving forward that way. I definitely am. This is the most exciting offseason I could think of in a long time. Unless, like after 2018, I was excited for other reasons. I thought we were a kicker away,
Apples
but
apples and oranges, yeah.
The one thing I don't want to be here pouring, some water on the fire and the excitement of us here and in the fans as well. But just this quarterback class, guys, has been hyped up to a level where I don't think it's there yet, right? I mean, but again, all you need is one team to fall in love with one of these quarterbacks. For me, right now, going into this whole process, it's early on, but Will Levis from Kentucky is the number 1 quarterback prospect. Everyone talks about Bryce Young. Bryce Young is. Guys, is coming in at 5'10", 190 pounds with a barely above average arm strength. I don't think he's going to be number 1 overall kind of material, So it's Will Levis. The one wild card in this quarterback class is Anthony Richardson from Florida. The kid is not ready to be a starter next year, but his toolbox. I mean, he's 6'4", 230 pounds. Is a dual threat quarterback. Quick release, huge arm strength. His thing is he's not ready in terms of his mechanics are off the base. His accuracy downfield kind of is hit or miss. So there's development there. So a team maybe like a Seattle, Pete Carroll say, hey, I got Geno Smith, guys. He made it to the Pro Bowl this year. So you go get a guy like Anthony Richardson, and you remember they stockpile with draft picks as well from the Denver trade. So Seattle's got a lot of big ammunition. If they see Anthony Richardson as the future star that they could project, they might come up and say, hey, we fall in love with Anthony Richardson. That's what we want. We're going to come back. Will Geno Smith start next year for us as well, and Richardson kind of sit back and get better. And then they potentially could have a star on their hands there as well. So, this class, for me, next year's quarterback class with Drake May and Williams from USC and Ears from Texas those are guys that excite me more as a scout than this overall class here. But again, going into this process, it's going to be Will Levis for me and again, Anthony Richardson is the wild card. But all you need is just one team to fall in love with a quarterback prospect, and they're going to go ahead and do what like Ryan Pace did, give up a bunch of picks just to move at one spot because he fell in love with Mitch Trubisky.
Well, if we're having this conversation again at this time next year, then there's a real big problem. So we're gonna like you said, Danny. It only takes one person to fall in love with a guy to move up the number one. We've seen quarterbacks get overdrafted before, not necessarily because that's where their talent slates out at, but where a team says we need a franchise guy and this is our opportunity to go get one, and we're gonna take him over some position players that are gonna have a bigger impact or a more immediate impact and roll the dice on a quarterback. Gaines, I want to ask you because you're always the Mr. Positivity here, and so this is actually giving you a reason for a lot of that positivity. What do you want to see happen in the offseason? Because we all know what we want to see in the offseason, but specifically, what do you want? How do you want to feel whenever we start this show back up? Before the season, as the rosters build up, everyone's drafted. What kind of mindset are you hoping to have going into next year?
Brother John, full transparency, brother. I want to feel we are truly on track to contend for a Super Bowl. I want to feel we have put pieces in place like the Eagles felt 2 years ago. The Eagles did a bunch of different moves, won picks, they got hurt, and then he was even like getting criticized. After this offseason, I want to feel like we have the youth, because youth means this is exciting because we get to this is a test for our staff is about to get tested on scouting and personnel development.
I agree.
It's one thing to draft a player, it's another thing to develop the player. So now can we develop homegrown talent, John, which also allows us to keep our own players so we don't have to spend too much of free agency, right? Mm-hmm. So next, when we start the show back up, bro, obviously it'll be very ambitious to say we're going to win it all next year. No, but I expect us to contend for our division, because with new talent, the youth, with the money, we should have a lot of veteran, a nice high price. If we have so many draft picks, John, I feel like the money we're going to spend should be on high grade veteran players, right? To kind of mold that. So I expect us to finish second, third, and above in our division next year, bro, molding our new assets. And so that's what I truly feel.
Cool. And AC, I believe, is Matt Eberflus at the podium yet?
No, right now I'm watching on my phone, and it looks like it's Nathan Peterman. Do you guys want to hear what he has
I think
to say?
we'll keep this train rolling.
No respect Nate Peterman, but I don't want to hear anything from him today.
No, you know what? I think we're okay on that. But coming off that, what you said, Gaines, you want to see a contender, you want to see a good product in the field, you want to be able to say you don't blow all your money in free agency because you want to cultivate it in the draft, which I think was what most great teams do. So I want to pose a question to all three of you that I posed probably 3 or 4 weeks ago on my show, and I want to see if there's anything different going into 2023. Playoffs be darned right now between Detroit and Green Bay, whatever happens there tonight. But going into 2023, what team in the NFC North would you most want to be? Which one do you think has the most bright future? And what if you had to take over as a head coach or you're a player or a GM, what team do you say, I want that team going into 2023? Which one are you taking? Danny, I'll start with you, and then we'll go around the horn to Tyler and then AC.
I'm taking the Matt Campbell kneecap biting Detroit Lions. And the reason why I'm taking them is because they have young talent that's ascending, that's getting better, right? We're talking about Aiden Hutchinson. We talk about Kirby Joseph, the young safety, and then they have Jared Goff there at quarterback, which, could be a guy that you can kind of win with, but not win because of. But we'll see how it happens there with their quarterback. But they have a young, dynamic offense, and then they're built around the running attack, right? So the same thing here with the Bears. You want an offense built around that rushing attack, along with Justin Fields, and then your quarterback, and then now you put some weapons around Justin Fields, so you have an offense that can average 25 to 26, 27 points a game, and then you come with a defense that's not going to be perfect. It's going to be defense that's going to be better than this year, right? If you have an offense that average about 25 to 27 points a game, and your defense is top 10 or top 12, you're going to win games, guys. You're going to win a lot of ball games. Obviously, special teams has to be respectable as well. And then for me, in terms of my expectations going next year, assuming obviously you have to see what they do in the offseason, right? We can't just assume they're going to get Not every pick's gonna be right. Not every sign's gonna be great. So assuming they put together a decent, roster of talent, I think they should be able to at least contend for one of these wild card spots.
Gaines, who you want to be going into 2023?
Not including the Bears?
No, include the Bears. Put them in there.
And so, like, when you first asked the question, I agree with Danny, the Lions. But like overall, like including the Bears, I gotta say the Bears, just because when a head coach takes over a team, John, they gotta mostly they take what they're given. They take what they're given. So a head coach right now, Eberflus who's coming in, he has the true pick of the litter to inject his culture into the team. That's like huge for somebody trying to place a vision to the newest person on the team. That's huge for and so in my opinion, it would be the Bears. I love the Lions. But
we got Eberflus at the podium.
He's at the podium. Let's go to him, bro.
All right, let me figure all this stuff out.
Just like Aldo.
Yeah. I think Aldo's a little better than me.
There we go. We're bringing him in.
You guys see?
I can see, yeah.
I see Twitter.
I see Twitter.
Well, I thought it would be right here. Yeah, I thought it would be right here on Twitter.
Well, Gaines, finish your thought while he's getting that up for us.
So my thought is,
let me figure it out.
The Bears have so many assets, John, like astronomical. Even before today, they had great assets with all these picks and cap space. But you actually have your quarterback. That's like from AC standpoint. AC knows my deep-rooted passion for, like, we've never had a quarterback that we truly believe in. We've had a couple decent ones that I believed in, but like being seriously now, Justin Fields is phenomenal. Justin Fields has the opportunity to be top 5, top 10 quarterback. I mean, he broke Michael Vick's, Lamar Jackson records. And so with that being said, John, I want us to get that first pick right. So my pick is the Bears to answer your question.
Yeah, and I go back and forth because I really think the Lions have a good infrastructure moving forward. But I also think about who am I going to win a championship with, or who can I win a championship with? And I'm not sure Jared Goff is a quarterback. He's been to a Super Bowl. They didn't win. He's been there. I'm not sure if he can win a Super Bowl in Detroit with Kirk Cousins and the Vikings. They have a ton of talent. There's no debating that. But can you win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins? We'll figure out this playoffs if he can elevate his game in the playoffs. And with Green Bay, there's no guarantees. You're coming in there and you don't know, is it going to be Aaron Rodgers? Is it going to be Jordan Love? Is he going to play one more year? Is he going to play 2 more years? Is he going to is he going to get traded, or what's going to go on here? So there's some uncertainty there, and maybe it's just because we haven't had one, at least in my lifetime as Bears fans. But like, as far as having a franchise quarterback that that you drafted and is going to be your future, that just means a lot to me. That for me, that's the most stabilizing force that you could potentially have. And as soon as Matt Eberflus starts talking, I'll shut up. But and then AC, you just took us into the Matrix there. All right.
I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
You know what? It's the offseason. It doesn't even matter. Which I can't wait to ask Aldo when he gets back from Soldier Field. What was it like to be at a Bears game at Soldier Field where the majority of the Bears fans didn't want the team to win? Like, I want to know. I want to know what that atmosphere is like when everyone's like, guys, just lose, but you're still in Soldier Field. But
yeah, when they took those 3 points off at the half, I'm like, come on, man, this is time. You need those points. What are you doing?
Isn't that it's weird how you can wire yourself like that? Like it was like weird cringy for me because I knew what was at stake, and I knew that like this was what, like, it's one of those things where it's like, this is what's best for them. This is what's best for them. But it's still, it's like, oh, why am I thinking that way? But to roll this back a little bit, I love the position that the Bears are in now. They do have the most unknowns because they do have all of this flexibility with draft picks and free agency that if you ask me this question again in September, maybe it's a little different depending on how if they decide to go, bargain bin hunting again and get a bunch of guys on 1-year contracts. And I'm not necessarily going to feel great about the team in its current state, but I don't think they're going to do that. I'm going to skip over you there, AC. But Danny, if they decide that they're going to, load up on whatever position they need, what position of need do you think that they have to absolutely address in the draft, and then position they absolutely have to address in free agency? Because when you look at some of the free agent lists, I'm just going to use receiver as an example. The free agent pool at receiver is horrendous.
Forget receiver.
But
receiver and free agency. The only way you address receivers is either through the draft or via veteran trade. The free agency receivers, unless you're bringing in a number 3 or number 4 receiver, that's different. But I think your roster is already inundated with 3 or 4 receivers around, on your roster currently right now. So
and they got 4 guys under contract. You got Claypool, Mooney. You signed St. Brown to an extension. You got Bayless Jones. How many receivers are you going to carry?
And Pringle was a 2-year deal. Wasn't Pringle a 2-year deal as well?
I'm not sure if he's on or not, but that means you basically got 1 or 2 spots left that you can sign, and one of them better be on the towards the top of the depth chart and not just towards the bottom. So you think it's got to be a trade or the draft for a wide receiver?
It's got to be a draft pick or it's got to be a trade. But for me, the number one priority is offense and defensive lines. I'm a big believer, big proponent, and you build. If you have a solid offense, a solid offensive line, solid defensive line, you have a solid football team. If those 2 units are suspect or are horrible, then you're gonna have I don't care how much talent you have on the outside, you're gonna have a horrible football team overall. So you devote, whether it's your free agent resources to the defensive line, your free agent resources to the offensive line. One of those 2 has to be hit via free agency, and the other one's got to be hit via the draft. Now, my preference, again, it all depends on what happens with other teams, who they franchise, who they transition tag, and all that stuff. But my preference, just looking at the free agent list, is you go defensive line in free agency, and you have ability, especially if you trade back and you recoup multiple draft picks, you can get offensive line help via the draft. And a couple of areas I'm looking for an offensive line in the draft is right tackle specifically. And guys, I'm looking at center. Center is a position that a lot of people just kind of assume that Lucas Patrick is going to be your center next year. Guys, Lucas Patrick, again, albeit he wasn't a healthy season for him, he hasn't proven to me he could play guard or center or be a starter. He could be a nice rotational guy, a nice backup, sure, but he cannot play guard for sure. Can he play center? We don't know, but that is a huge position for me in terms of the offensive line. And the other spot is left guard. Cody Whitehair's got a $9 million deal. That's an option. I think it's a team option. Is he, for me, he's just a guy now. He's not someone that's great or horrible. He's just a guy. Are you going to live with that $9 million for another season of Cody Whitehair there at left guard? Are you going to maybe trade him, cut him free, and bring in a cheaper, lesser prospect? We'll see what happens there. But to answer your question, John, offense and defensive line are first and foremost on my list. And this is where Ryan Poles, for me, I'm watching him closely here. Obviously, this is his second season as a GM. Last year, we knew what he was trying to do early on. He was trying to, cut bait and try, get under the cap, eat all this dead money, and recoup some draft picks and build a team via the draft, which is fine and great. Now, Ryan Poles, we talked about it earlier in the beginning of the show, you are under a microscope here because you have I want to see your ability to put a team together. We think you can draft offensive linemen because you hit that 5th round pick with Braxton Jones. You got a couple of guys on this second day of the draft that could be potential starters, could be nice backups. We'll see how it goes there. So Ryan Poles to me is under the microscope right now. I want to see what he does next. But offense, defensive line, you get those 2 units built, you make them rock solid, and now you start building out from the outside.
Hey, AC, I haven't heard your voice in a long time and I miss it. So what do you think they're going to go? What do you think they're going to address in free agency?
Well, I just want to apologize. First of all, I don't know what I was doing wrong. I shared my screen with YouTube. I could hear it in my headset, but you guys told
as long
me
as you're having a good
it,
time, that's all that matters.
So
as long as you're in
I wasn't. I was not because I don't obviously I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So amateur hour over here. But I'm sorry, what was your question? One more time.
As far as where they should spend money in free agency and where they should pay attention to in the draft, because as we were talking about before, the free agent pool with wide receivers terrible, but you assume that they're gonna try to add someone of a higher value, not just a number 5 or a number 6, given what the depth chart currently looks like. But they have, as Danny said, just big needs across both lines, offensive and defensive. Yeah. So where do you want to spend the money and where do you want to grow them?
That's where I'm focusing at is building through the trenches. The question you asked earlier, which NFC North team I would take over or try to emulate, would be the Lions for that very reason. They have dumped resource after resource into both their lines to the point where Jared Goff actually looks like a decent quarterback, and I really don't think he is one. So that's definitely where I'm going. Deron Payne is my number one free agency hits. I'm talking Julius Peppers. Send your coach out there at his doorstep at midnight and go get that guy, because I really think he would mean a lot to our defense. You could plug him in at 3 technique. Unless Washington re-signs him, that's my number one priority is go get Deron Payne. And then, I mean, who knows who you end up with in the draft. There's a few edge rushers I like. Will Anderson's pretty good. Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. I've watched a little bit of him. I like how he is. I like how Miles Murphy is built out of Clemson. So I really think if you can get the 3 technique in free agency, you don't have to worry about hoping you get Jalen Carter, who would be a perfect 3 technique. You can work on the edge rusher in the draft, and I feel like there's a few of them there that I like a lot.
How are you moving these chess pieces around, Gaines?
Bro, I don't know. It's fun.
Yeah.
I don't know, because when AC talks about Carter, I've only done minimum research, but that's the name that keeps coming up for me is Carter, that he's the closest to a generational talent. I don't know. I'll leave that for the experts. But me and Danny have talked about that he plays defensive tackle, right? Interior pass rush.
Yeah, I saw him in Lexington. He didn't have a great game against Kentucky. And then he struggled against Ohio State, which obviously they were focusing on him. And there's questions about his stamina, a lot like when Jordan Davis was coming out last year. They were questioning his stamina. I mean, I don't know if he's to that level of – I loved Jordan Davis coming out last year. But he wrecked us, and I really didn't see that out of Jalen Carter. I don't know what the issue was, if he's been dealing with, everybody's banged up. It was kind of late in the season. I really don't know, but it kind of salted me away from Jalen Carter a little bit. But, I'm no Danny Shimon. I don't break down the tape like him and Neil, but from my perspective, I don't know if Jalen Carter, if I would take him that high. Now, if you trade back some, and he's still sitting there, sure, go ahead. But
when moving the pieces, John, that's what I was kind of hoping. Yeah, if the Colts, like AC said, want the quarterback so bad, cool. Go to number 1. I go to number 2. I'm still answering my phone. That's what, honestly, I hope that's the first move. Unless it's devolving what you said first. If Devontae Adams is available for the number 1 overall pick, you make that damn trade.
And depending on where the Raiders shake out in their draft positioning, and I think all of us, and I'd say 99% of the people in the chat room are in agreement that trade the pick and see what you get for it. Now, Danny, let's just, for the sake of being devil's advocate here, is there a player in this draft to say, I don't think it's worth trading, we got to get this guy? Is there a player at any position in this draft where you say, we got to use the number 1 overall pick because this guy is going to be a generational talent at any position? Or is it just so much like there's a bunch of good players, but nothing that says, whoa, we don't need to trade this pick?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the players in the draft, there isn't a generational type of player. I mean, there are some the guys that can become, like Jalen Carter. He has a chance to be a dominant interior presence on the Bears defensive line. But there are some who have talked about his off the field stuff. I haven't heard anything off the field, but there are some reports of him being off the field issues. Obviously, the Ohio State game, I'm not gonna base my overall projection on him off of one game. I take an entire body of work, which is all 3 years at Georgia. But Ohio State, he looked like he was, fatigued. It looked like conditioning wasn't well. Was he dealing with a bug? I mean, was he sick? We don't know. We haven't heard anything. So, so I'm not gonna kind of take that and just kind of put it all into together. But in terms of the number of our players, there isn't a guy that I'd say, all right, you know what, this guy can be a generational player for sure without any question marks. Obviously, Jalen Carter falls into a position where, yes, he could be dominant. In terms of pass rush, guys, I know everyone loves Will Anderson, and I think he's a hell of an athlete, hell of a pass rusher for Alabama. But I just struggle with the fit here on this defense. He's 230 pounds. He's not going to be a hand in the ground defensive end. Now, so why I've been going back and forth with Will Anderson, I've been looking at Von Miller. Looking to see how Von Miller has been used over his career. He's been a 3-4 outside linebacker. Obviously, with the Bills, he plays a defensive end when he comes in and rushes the opponent. But they do a nice way. They have a nice package, a nice plan there for Von Miller. Are you going to use a potential number 1 overall pick on a guy that you have to have a kind of a game plan for, a package for? I struggle with him back and forth. The guy that I absolutely love in terms of a pass rusher, not sure I take him number one overall, is Tyree Wilson from Texas Tech. This guy, talk about 6'5", 6'6", long arms. He's only had 7.5 sacks this past season, but this guy is dominant. I mean, you guys put on this guy's tape, and he's not Nick Bosa, but he hits players like Nick Bosa does, meaning that he hits them and they feel it. Quarterbacks get rattled. Running backs get tackled through the body. I mean, it's just plays with that kind of physicality that I just love watching him. Now, the one thing with him is he broke his foot. And he says he's going to be ready to go ahead and play or do the whole draft process, and he'll be ready for that. But big guys, 6'5", 6'6", that much, 272, 275, 280 with bad feet scare me. They scare me. So I got to make sure that's all taken care of.
Danny, when did he break it, brother?
It broke it out versus Kansas State. So I think it was like 7th or 8th game of the season, if I'm mistaken. So halfway through the season, he said he's going to be ready to do all the pre-draft stuff. So we'll see how it goes. But that's one red flag. I will look at his foot and I'll make sure that is all crystal clear. But I'm not going. That's the guy I love. I love Tyree Wilson. I love his fit because he's going to be a true hand in the ground defensive end. And he also has the ability to stand up in a 2-point stance and rush from a 2-point stance as an outside linebacker. Now, he doesn't have the athletic overall ability, obviously, of a Will Anderson. Will Anderson's about 6'2", 6'3", 230 pounds, dripping wet. So we'll see how that goes there. But definitely, there's a lot of players here, a lot of good players, chances that they can beat dominant players. Obviously, Carter, Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, just to name a few. Paris Johnson, the offensive tackle from Ohio State. He plays left tackle. For me, he's a right tackle. He's a plug-and-play right tackle for the Bears, but obviously you don't take him number one overall. If you can trade down, that's why I'm staying in the top 10 or 12 for Paris Johnson. He's a guy I can play at right tackle. Roderick Johnson, I think it's Jones, the left tackle for Georgia, is a guy that's also athletic, physical. He can also play right tackle for you as well. So there are options here. Skorancic, the kid from Northwestern, who's played left tackle at Northwestern, took over for Rashawn Slater when he left for the NFL. He could play some left tackle. He could be a dominant left guard. So now if you get a Skorancic in here, now you have your left side where you have a Braxton Jones and a Skorancic. Now you're building yourself a nice dominant left side of the offensive line. So a ton of things to get excited about, a ton of players. Is just in terms of where you're going to position yourself, how far back you're going to trade down. Mm-hmm. But if you don't find a partner, if no one's going to give you what you think that number one overall pick is worth, you got to go and make the best pick for your team. And for me right now, it's either Jalen Carter or Tyree Wilson.
So what you just said brought something to my mind, Danny. It's like, how far are you willing to trade down? Because the further you go down, and I'm trying to look at an updated list here right now, but you have the Commanders at 14. You have then you can go far. You can go as far down as
15.
The Jets at 15, or even the Buccaneers at 19, because I can't imagine Brady coming back. So maybe they feel like they're going to go get a Garoppolo or a Derek Carr. But how far are you willing to go down? And I posed this question earlier this week, but I didn't use the Commanders as an example. Let's just say the Commanders at 14 say, if you trade us the number one overall pick, you go down to 14, but you also get Terry McLaurin with it.
No,
it's gotta be more. I mean, I'm gonna need from 1 to 14.
With the I should clarify that this is going to be those are going to be the crown jewels of the package, and then you sprinkle in some supplementary picks in there as well. But would you be willing to move to a 14, or would you be willing to move to a 19, or if the Buccaneers threw Mike Evans in there? Like what would the package actually have to look like for you to be willing to move down that far into the draft?
Yeah, I mean, for me to go ahead, Tyler. Go ahead, Tyler. You want to?
No, I'm sorry, Danny. But your firstborn, it would have to include your firstborn son. Go ahead.
What if they give you next year's? You swap them and you get next year's first round pick too.
Let's use the Washington example for example, like Washington, right? So say Washington gives you the 14th pick, Terry McLaurin. I'm going to want the 14th pick, Terry McLaurin, the second round pick this year, a fourth round pick this year. I want the first and second round picks next year. That's how much, because the lower you go down, the higher they come up, the more you're gonna get, right? So I mean, I'm talking about treasure troves of picks and potentially players there. But I mean, if in terms of just picks with no players involved, I mean, I'm looking at 6 or 7, because again, you drop down to 6 or 7, you still have a chance at Tyree Wilson, at Skorancic, you have Paris Johnson. These guys that can come in and be starters for you next year at a position of need.
But speaking of position of need, though, how much is Ryan Poles going to want a number one wide receiver, and how much is he willing to move back to get that? Because he's not going to get it. He's not going to get even if you draft a receiver high this year, he's not going to be your number one. There's no one in free agency that's going to be your number one.
No.
How far are you willing to? What are you willing to concede to bring in a number one to your team and still, try to get equal value for that pick?
Right.
So,
I mean, you got to see how things shake out. There's always in the offseason, always someone comes available that you don't know about. I mean, from the rumblings, obviously this is not confirmed. It's all speculation, but DeAndre Hopkins could be available for a day 3 pick. Is that a guy you guys want? I would love to have DeAndre Hopkins. I know he's up there in age. I know he's got a 1-year contract, I believe in the $20 million range or close to it, but we know salary cap is not going to be an issue, right? You bring a guy like that can be a veteran presence for the Claypools, for the Moonies, for these young guys, and you draft a kid in the 2nd or 3rd round. You have a mentor now that's going to be, a guy that's going to be a true number one, a guy that is not what he used to be. Okay, albeit we understand, but he's still a very damn good, productive player, and a guy that can be a go-to guy for Justin Fields. Now you put a guy like DeAndre Hopkins in there with the Claypools, with the Cole Kmet, with the Darnell Mooney, with or Justin Fields. I mean, now you have some weapons you can actually attack defenses with. So that's a name to keep an eye on. We talked about Devontae Adams, and the only reason his name is coming up is because of the whole Derek Carr situation. But he said that he's happy with being in Las Vegas. We'll see how that thing shakes out. But these are things where you have to get creative if you're Ryan Poles, because like you mentioned, John, for agency, that's not an area you're going to go and upgrade your receiver position. That's why the reasons why I think Poles went ahead and made the Claypool trade, because he knew there wasn't anyone out there in free agency that was better than a Chase Claypool. So that's why he gave up that 2nd round pick to get Claypool. So you got to get creative if you want to bring in a veteran or a receiver here to be your quote unquote number one.
Which that 2nd round pick is basically the 32nd overall pick, with Miami forfeiting their 1st rounder, which becomes basically another 1st rounder that's going to Pittsburgh, who just missed the playoffs today as well. So they're going to be looking to reboot a little bit here. So AC, I'm going to bring you in on this. How far are you willing to fall down into the draft if they're going to give you a treasure trove of picks and maybe a wide receiver? How far down are you willing to go? Because I want to preface it with this as well, though. You're hoping that you're never picking in this spot again, ever. You're hoping that you don't have a top 5 pick, a top 10 pick, hell, even a top 15 pick. You're hoping this is a one and done, get everything you can for it. And if you're not going to stay in the top 5 and you're going to punt down to 14, 15, it's going to have to be a lot, right?
Right. I mean, I would look at the Jets at 15. They want a quarterback. They have a ton of pieces on defense that maybe they can tie into that draft pick and send you a whole bunch of pieces. But in general, I'm not coming out of the top 10. I think Carolina's got the 8th pick or something like that. Maybe that's somewhere intriguing with them, but I don't know if I want any players off their roster. You know what I mean?
Atlanta's 8 and Carolina's 9.
Oh, okay. So I was looking at I thought it was 7 and then 8.
I
haven't looked at it updated.
Yeah, this looks like it just got updated about 26 minutes ago.
Yeah, right now we got, let's see, Bears 1, Houston 2, Seattle 3 via the Denver trade, Arizona 4, Colts 5, Detroit 6 because of the Rams pick, and then Vegas is 7th right now.
Yeah. And then Falcons and then Panthers.
Yep.
Yeah. But that's probably the lowest I'm looking is maybe the Panthers try to jump some other teams to go get a quarterback. They've got a couple of young players like a Brian Burns that rushes the passer really well for them if they would be willing to tie him into a trade package. But I'm not going out of the top 10 if I can help it.
I'd like to, staying in the top 10, I think would be the target. Is Danny, is there a possibility that like someone like a Will Anderson could still be there at 8 that you're targeting, or is he going to be swallowed up by them? Because whoever you trade with is obviously going to take a quarterback, and so that eats up one of them. So could one of those guys maybe even fall to 7, 8, 9?
Right now, John, I don't think he would. Obviously, it's early in the process, but I'm just looking at the order is right now. I mean, I think Seattle could take him at number 3 because they run a hybrid. Clint Hurt is their defensive coordinator. They run a hybrid 3-4 defense, and I think they could use a pass rusher there out in Seattle. Arizona obviously could use them, with what they have out there. We've talked about the Colts before. They run traditional 4-3s, but we'll see what happens there in Indy in terms of the coaching staff, who they bring in. They might bring in an offensive or defensive coordinator that runs a 3-4 defense. So that'll be a nice ideal fit for them. there. So, there's different scenarios you could do. Obviously, the Raiders could take him as well. So I do not see Will Anderson really, again, early on. I don't see him dropping beyond, 4 or 5 possibly if the Bears or first couple teams, skip him or pass him up.
And we keep talking about the defensive side of the ball, but obviously a huge area of need is the offensive line. And so as far as how high is too high for one of the offensive linemen in this draft, Danny, how impressive is the offensive line crop coming out this year? And if you're really targeting one, could you trade back to 10 or 11 to get the best one?
The offensive line is and we're looking at tackles mostly, right? I mean, right now, there isn't a tackle I would say it's worthy of a top 2 or top 3 pick. We talked about some of the guys that can drop down later on. We're talking Paris Johnson. He's a guy from Ohio State. He's played both left and right tackle. He played left tackle this year. I see him as a right tackle. I see him more on that 8, 9, 10 range right now. He's a guy that if you get dropped down that far, he could probably pick him and plug him in at right tackle. And you have your starter, you have your bookend tackles with Braxton Jones and Paris Johnson. The other guy I like is this kid from Georgia, Broderick Jones is his name. 6'4", 6'5", 285 pounds, 290. He's more of an athletic left tackle. Some like him as a guard. I like to see him, try him out there left tackle. So obviously there isn't any can't miss prospect here. And then obviously we talked about Skoransky, the kid from Northwestern. Guys played left tackle successfully at Northwestern. Can he play? He's going to come in probably measurables will be lesser ideal than what we want at left tackles, similar to what happened with Rashawn Slater. But of course, he's been playing left tackle for the Chargers and he's been doing all right. So, but for Skoransky, I would bring him in and plug him in at left guard, and I'd have him and Braxton Jones as my bookends on the left side, and not even worry about that anymore. And then just worry about obviously center and then right tackle. So, those are the areas for Skoransky. You're probably looking at 10 to 12 right now. Again, guys, this is all early on. These, how things happen with the combine, the Senior Bowls, and all these other games. Guys jump up and down the boards. But if we're looking at these offensive line players right now, Paris Johnson probably 9, 10, Skoransky more 10, 12 is the area and range in which they're probably going to go at right now.
So let's go around again, because we're talking about the future, and we're going to continue talking about the future until we see it actually unfold. So let's try to put a bow on the season that we just watched end. And AC, I'll start with you. If you got to give a report card to Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, what are you giving them at the end of this season after everything you saw last offseason, how Poles handled his business? How do you grade him and Eberflus for the fact that they did lose 14 games, but they didn't get crushed in all of them? Right. So what do you think?
I gotta go with like a C-. I'm being honest. I mean, I love Justin Fields. I love to see his development. But if you remember how much of a gaggle fuck the offseason was with Tevin Jenkins, is he coming? Is he not coming? Are we cutting him? Are we trading him? You got Eberflus. I mean, he's been okay. He hasn't been a Dabble or a Doug Peterson, some other first-year coaches that I like better. Luckily, he wasn't a Nathaniel Hackett either. But, so I'm going to go like right in the middle. I wouldn't give him a failing grade, but they could have done better. I mean, Ryan Poles' big swing for a wide receiver in the draft was Velus Jones, who – is he a running back? He can't return punts. He can't return kicks because he fumbles. I don't know what we're doing there. So that's why I'm kind of like right in the middle. I wouldn't give him a failing grade because he was kind of up against the wall with the cap. Partially his own fault because he's tearing it down. But but that keeps me from giving. I can't give him an A or a B because of that.
Although Velus had a good game today. I mean, I think of all of it,
he's had a good
nice touchdown run. He had a nice back shoulder adjustment, made a catch. So I mean, he held on to the ball, didn't fumble it.
Yeah, he's had a good about 3 weeks. The last 3 weeks he's been okay.
Yeah, you know why? Because 3 weeks ago I said he could potentially be on the practice squad next year, and then all of a sudden he turned out. So I told you I'm able to speak the opposite into existence, and that's why
I'm right there with you, John. I came on here and said I think we need an upgrade at tight end, and then Cole Kmet was like, Let me go do a hat trick right quick, then you can shut your mouth, AC.
Yeah, it's like I said, they're not a 2 or 3 win team. They are. I said they're not going to get the first overall pick. They got it. Bayless Jones is struggling. He might not make the team next year. Making home run plays. So as long as I keep saying things and I want the opposite to happen, I think we're going to be just fine. Gaines, I want to go to you as far as report cards go. Give me one for Eberflus. Give me one for Ryan Poles.
A report card?
Yeah. What's a grade? Letter grade.
It's kind of tough, bro. It's truly kind of tough, man, because Eberflus has to operate in the present time, and Poles has to operate in the future. And like taking my emotions out of it, Brian Poles has done great things for the Bears over the next 2-3 years, and Eberflus has to operate with trying to win games. And after Robert Quinn, Khalil Mack, Roquan Smith, like it's really tough to win games, bro. And like in my honest opinion, it's tough, bro. I can say CC, I can say BB in terms of what is the goal of a GM and a head coach besides winning a Super Bowl. A brand new head coach and a brand new GM is to inject, I'm gonna use it again, your vision into the team. His principle, that kind of went away from me like second half of the season because you're operating now with second strings and third string guys. And so you're kind of just getting a look-see to the deeper end of your roster. Ryan Poles as a GM, give him a B for making tough decisions. I mean, making tough decisions, that's hard. It's hard to trade Roquan Smith. I think the Ravens about to pay him. Like in terms of the AFC, he's one of the top dudes. He's one of the top linebackers in the AFC, John.
Yeah, so if they franchise Lamar, they got to pay Roquan. That's basically how it's going to work.
One or the other. And so Eberflus, he's like we talked about it the other week. He's the guy looking for like, okay, next year is my real time. And so I'll give it BB in terms of implementing vision because the guy still played hard. Like, honestly, guys, let's be straight up with it. I don't want to say we lost on purpose, but like, yeah.
Plus Eberflus was getting good play out of guys that were bagging groceries last month. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
If you look in that secondary.
Exactly.
Hell, look at Jack Sanborn.
The season's pretty much
that jersey's on its way.
Yeah, as it should be. I like Jack Sanborn.
And John, you brought it up earlier about the games under a one possession loss. And guys, the last time we lost to the Vikings, it was by one possession on a last minute strip. We were on the way to the game-winning game. And so I feel like we are closer than we think.
Yeah.
We are closer than we think, which is why this draft is so important.
Yeah.
And before you pass it off, I'm just gonna say Brandon Cooks is available for draft now, per the Texans. So to land him with some late round picks and still draft a wide receiver. If you bring up the Jets, I want the dude Wilson. There's no conversation about it. So it may be an opportunity to land somebody in a trade and somebody in the draft. But in terms of what Danny says about the draft, what the Cowboys did before they drafted Zeke, we have a prime opportunity to do.
Load up and
address the offensive and defensive line. Get somebody like Pearson or Parson, who's a dual threat, John.
All right, Danny, we'll kick it over to you. Report cards. I know you're high on both of the, or you're high on Poles. What do you think about him and Eberflus for the season?
Well, I don't know if I'd go as far as saying I'm high on Poles.
I've
like him. I've got my eye on Poles, and like I said, this is a big offseason for him. You know, for me, just the overall talent of the roster was obviously deficient, and we know what they're doing. They're trying to strip it down, and bring in their culture and all that stuff. So for Ryan Poles, I can't give him a C because the overall talent on the roster wasn't that great. So I'll give him a D. I like some of his picks. Brisker looks like he's going to be a guy that's going to be a starter in that defense secondary. Kyler Gordon came on, but too many ups and downs. I want to see some improvement with him, you know, in terms of next year. You know, Braxton Jones, obviously your left tackle in the 5th round. That's a major get there. We talked about Velus Jones and his inconsistencies this year as well, to see him improve there as well. So we'll see what Ryan Poles does. But for him, I have to give him a D, because again, the talent of this roster was just horrible. I mean, they're, you know, to you guys' point, you know, there are guys that were, you know, up on the streets, and they're coming in and within, you know, 6 days they're starting for the Bears.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that tells you what kind of depth, what kind of talent they have on the roster. For Eberflus and company, again, another coach. You know, conservative defensive minded coaches are not my favorite. But one thing with Eberflus, I have to tip my cap to him, because, you know, the guys play hard for him. You know, other than that game Detroit last week, you know, I think effort was there. I think the guys buy into him. You know, Luke Getsy looks like he's an offensive coordinator that's got some innovation in him. The guy that can make adjustments on the fly. We saw what happened after that Washington game, how he kind of turned that offense into a Justin Fields centric offense, and it took off. You know, they're putting points on the board. They're still losing, but they're putting points on the board. So, you know, they look. Alan Williams got a lot of question marks in terms of, you know, defensive coordinator, his ability to call defenses. So we'll see how that happens. But because the fact that Eberflus was given the hand he was given, that the team played hard for him, you know, most of the time. They're 1-7 in 1-score games, you know. So I think that's a tip of the hat to the coaching staff. So I'll give them a C to C- there for the coaching staff. But, you know, obviously both the coaches and the front office are going to be on high alert. Like I said earlier in the show, John, we're keeping receipts now. Now it's your show. Now you can't say it's Nagy or Pace or so on and so forth. You know, Nagy and Pace gave you Justin Fields, right? And you know, so we'll see how that goes from there. But this is, from now on here, it's going to be the Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus show, and we're keeping receipts.
So Danny, bro, and you bring up great points, bro, and that's what's freaking exciting for me. You said 1-7 in 1-point games,
1-score games,
yeah, 1-possession games, yeah.
And so look how depleted we are.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The fact that we're even in 1 score,
yeah,
have an opportunity to win a game within 1 score, and being so depleted should tell you something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, you're right, and the fact that I was going to give them both. I was gonna cop out and say give them incompletes, but that's not fair in the nature of the game. So I'll give them both a C, mainly because the fact that the Detroit game didn't happen more often, or at least happen earlier, is a testament to guys wanting to play for this coach and playing hard and being in those 1-possession games where I said the majority of the games this year, the Bears were at a disadvantage at talent. And no matter who they were playing, they're going to be at a disadvantage of talent. And the fact that they could still keep it interesting, keep it close, and then they obviously weren't able to close it out. That's unfortunate. And hopefully you're hoping to turn the page next year, where instead of 1-7 in those games, you're 7-1 in those games. You're able to close those games out. And for Ryan Poles, I just think that this dude had a vision coming in, and it was like, I'm going to strip everything absolutely down. We're gonna clear house. We're gonna get all these contracts off the books, and then we're gonna build it up. So, I mean, it didn't start off well when his first big splash in free agency was Ogunjobi, and then he failed the physical, and then it ended up going to Pittsburgh. So I think that I'm gonna give him a C, just because I think that he's starting out the first phase of his plan. I think it's phase 1 complete now. Now it's phase 2, where anyone can clear out a cupboard. Now you got to stock it. And so I think that we're gonna see what's gonna happen now. This is gonna be it's one of the most pivotal, important off seasons that I can remember in recent history for the Chicago Bears, because they are going to look very, very different next year. And like Danny said earlier in the broadcast, if they screw this up, you're also setting the team back 4 or 5 years, because you're pushing all of these resources into how you're going to build this team. And if the team doesn't work, then you're kind of stuck with it. So we'll see how that goes. And just because, and kind of rolling off of that, Ryan Poles talk, are there any of the free agencies or any of the free agent signings this year that Ryan Poles make that you would consider re-signing? Not the guys that he gave multi-year deals to, not the undrafted free agents, or not the guys that he drafted. Is there anyone that he signed in free agency in this past offseason that you're bringing back? Because the only one I could think of is maybe Nicholas Morrow. But is there any other one that he signed? Because I think he traded for N'Keal Harry, Justin Jones. I'm trying to think of some of the other free agent. Let's just say Pringle is a free agent. I think he might be. Are there any of those guys that you're saying, you know what, they proved enough, let's bring them back?
For me, it was the Nicholas Morrow was a linebacker. Depending on what you do on linebacker, obviously, I think Sanborn has entrenched himself as one of the starters. Now you probably bring in another young kid there in terms of a draft pick or maybe a veteran. Who knows? We'll see how that goes. But I think that's the guy at the top of mind right now was Nick Morrow. Justin Jones is a solid veteran. He's a guy that I would bring back in terms of a rotation, but not a guy that I would bring to count on to be my 3 technique or my starting defensive tackle next season. So that's those are the names offensively. Riley Reif was a solid veteran signing, late signing in the training camp area. But again, we saw today, he's not what he used to be. Although he did solidify right tackle for us when we needed him. When we lost Borum early on. But there's not if they lose Riley Reif, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. Even if they lose Nick Morrow, I'm not going to lose sleep over it, to be honest with you. But he's the one guy. If I say, all right, one of the veteran signings he made, if we could bring him back for another short-term contract, I'd be fine with it until you bring in a permanent replacement for Nick Morrow.
Any other names or anybody else that think that we should bring back?
Danny kind of covered them all. I was going to take Justin Jones, as a depth piece. I feel like he could be a rotational guy that you bring in to help, especially if you end up drafting a Jalen Carter. If he has issues with stamina, he's going to have to have good depth behind him then. So that's the only one that came to my mind. I feel like Nick Morrow, he's been fine, but I think he's replaceable. Jack Sanborn's an undrafted free agent who's now your starter and made you comfortable enough with trading away Roquan. I'm sorry, Brother Gaines. I know you love Roquan, but I think Sanborn made them think like, well, can we pay this guy $24 million or can we let him walk and refill the production, via the draft or undrafted free agent. And I think they did a good job of that.
Gaines, you bringing anybody back that Poles signed in the offseason?
I didn't care about anybody until Danny about Jones. To tell you the truth, because honestly, John, it's like if we're gonna rebuild, we gotta freaking really rebuild.
Oh, they will.
We can't hold it. We can't just hold on to sentimental things. Like, bro, I want to win a Super Bowl. I can't make that clear enough. It's time to freaking win. It's not about emotions at this point. If your thought process is contrary to winning the overall goal, you shouldn't be a part of this vision. Period. In the story. So we have an abundance of rookies coming in. We might have 12 rookies coming. Who knows? That's what with the draft, the way this draft is looking, we're gonna have some top quality guys. We need space for them. We're gonna need space. I'm happy with what we saw today. Velus Jones, Kyler Gordon, Brisker with some vicious hits. These guys are young. Eddie Jackson showed his worth as a leader. But John, in terms of, I think Nick Morrow was cool. He's a linebacker. He's an NFL pro. But at the end of the day, I saw the taper off when Roquan left. Sanborn, bro, I love it. I love that guy, bro. I love Sanborn.
I think he's under contract for another 2 years. It's like a 3-year deal he's technically under So I think that there's a general consensus here that we're not going to be heartbroken if one of Ryan Poles' first off-season signees are not back. Let's talk about guys that are already on the team. Are there any guys that you say, you know what, we could cut bait with and we're going to be just fine? Because let's just start with it. Let's just start with the main name that most people are talking about is David Montgomery. And is this a name and this a guy that obviously means a lot to this team, is a leader on the team, he runs hard, love his passion. Doesn't seem to be, when he does get hurt, it doesn't seem to be he's hurt for very long, or he defies expectations on how long he's actually going to be out. Let's not forget that the beginning of was it last season they thought they lost him to a serious knee injury and he was still ready for week 1. Is this a guy that you want to bring back depending on it? Because I think unlike wide receiver, there's quite a plethora of free agent running backs out there. I believe, although the Giants plan on, or there's a report that they want to re-sign Saquon Barkley, he could potentially be hitting the market. Josh Jacobs will be hitting the market. Miles Sanders is going to be out there. The guy from the Patriots, I'm messing up his name right now.
Damian Harris.
Damian Harris is going to be out there. Kareem Hunt's going to be out there. And then David Montgomery is going to be out there. Do you think that the market could dictate him as a small enough price that they could just bring him back? Or is this a guy that you want to see back? And I'll just throw that out to anybody who wants to jump in.
Well, for me,
I should have done that.
No, for me, it's with Montgomery. First of all, my rule is I do not sign running backs unless they're great to second year contracts. Or second contracts in general. So I mean, Montgomery, love him, love leadership, love what he brings to the team. But he's not a guy that, if depending on what the market brings him a $9, $10 million, $11 million contract, I can't pay that. But if you're talking about a modest $6, $7 million on a 1-2 year deal, he's a nice 1-2 punch, him and Khalil Herbert in the backfield. So because I can go get you a running back in the second or third round, or even fourth, fifth round in this draft that can come in and be a contributor for you next year. That's how easy these guys are flipped. A lot of guys are talking about free agents in terms of Tony Pollard. I love Tony Pollard. I think he would be a nice complement to what Khalil Herbert doesn't for the Bears. But again, you're talking about a guy that's going to get probably more money because he brings you more money than Montgomery, because it brings you more in terms of what he gives you in a passing game, in terms of you can put him on a slot receiver, have him run routes and all that stuff. So again, running backs are to me, I can find them in the draft, especially if you have a starter in trench, which for me, Khalil Herbert is a guy that I would easily move into the starting role. He's got to work on his pass blocking. That's one thing he's got to work on his pass blocking, but I'd be comfortable there. In terms of your first question, a guy that we could, let go and not blink an eye on, and I think I mentioned him earlier in the show, is Cody Whitehair. He's making $9 million next year. He's a guy, for me, is just a guy out there right now. Injuries and the playing all these multiple seasons has taken a toll on him eventually. I think he's a guy that, if you release him, I think he can probably fill in. Again, depending on what you're doing for agency, when you're doing the draft, you can probably fill in easily and get him out of there and save that $9 million. Not that you need, not that you're up against the cap or anything like that, but $9 million, still $9 million. You could always, release that guy as a veteran and move on there as well. But so that's the one veteran that comes to mind is a guy, and to guys, and you guys might disagree here, but Travis Gibson is a guy that really, really disappointed me this year. I think he's a guy that if you cut bait with him, before the season, I'd be like, no way. He's a guy you can use as a foundation, at least as a left defensive end. He could be a base defensive end guy. He really disappointed me today, and for some reason today he had the courage to yak back and forth with Justin Jefferson. I'm not sure what was going on there. It's like, dude, you're down. You're getting killed here. What are you yakking back and forth with Justin Jefferson for? But anyway, he's another veteran that if you let go, I would have no problems with.
We'll kick it over to you, AC. Is there what are your thoughts on David Montgomery, and then anyone else on the team?
Yeah, I was gonna let Brother Gaines go because it sounded like he had something to say. But I'm pretty step for step with Danny. If we can get him Monty for a 1 to 2 year contract, I'm cool with that. But for the most part, and you see it around the league when these running backs get their big second contracts, injuries start piling up, they start slowing down, and you can usually replace them via the draft. I love what Montgomery does on the field as well as off the field because he's such a great leader and just a humble guy. He seems like the kind of guy that we would hang out at the bar and have a beer with. You know what I'm saying? And those kind of guys, they don't just grow on trees, especially at that level in the NFL. But I'm looking at the draft. For the most part, maybe he's a guy that because of the running back market, he's still sitting there after the draft. And say you miss out on a guy that you thought you had your eye on in the draft, maybe you can call Montgomery up after that and say, hey, man, do you want to come back? Give you a 2 year, $10 million contract or something, get him for $5 or $6 million a year. I'd be perfectly fine with that. And then he talked about Gibson. As soon as you said Gibson, I threw the deuces up. I mean, we're the number one overall pick for a reason, fellas. There's not a whole lot of guys on this roster that I'm going to shed a tear on if they're out the door next year,
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like, wait, let's not grasp onto, I like this guy, I like this guy. Like, well, you can't like everybody on a 3-14 ball club. So they're gonna have to cut bait with a few people here. Gaines, I'm gonna bring you in on this one. I know you like David Montgomery. I know you like culture guys. He's definitely a culture guy. What are you doing with him?
I understand the business aspect. I think Danny should replace Ted Phillips. Because he knows business aspects and he knows football, in my opinion. And so, but to answer this question, I'm not getting upset because I'm more sober. I'll fix that problem. Doctor said. And so, did David Montgomery keep us from winning? First of all, I believe we can get David Montgomery on discount. That's one. I feel like we can get him at a great discount. There was no reason to go away. David Montgomery, he fights for extra yards all the time. I understand you want to switch guys out, but when we talk like that, you got to understand that's why guys hold out.
Yeah.
Because we're going to think like that. And then they got to Kelly Herbert come here and get 2,000 yards here. He's holding out. So it's like, we got to treat our people good who were here during the bad times. I think David Montgomery on a team, and we get the piece that we're supposed to have, we're going to always play with a lead, right? A running back playing with a lead runs differently, in my opinion. And so I hope we can get David. But guess what, John? I would not mind adding Kareem Hunt to the table, to Kareem Hunt to it. I would love that trifecta. I would truly love that, in my opinion. Can you get rid of them all and go get a running back? For sure. But you want somebody who can set culture. It's something to be said about a running, any player, not position, in the locker room. Being able to calm down spirits when it gets tough. David Montgomery has been here through 2 different regimes so far. So there are some things off the field that I feel like aren't as valued as they should be. Yeah. I don't agree. Don't pay him over $9. Don't pay him over $9 million. Yeah, for sure. We got the cap space, but I hope we hold on to him. He's not holding us back from winning a playoff game.
So I think that as much as the free agent market may hinder the Bears in the wide receiver position, that may help them at the running back position, because if it was just David Montgomery and then nobody else, then he could command a little bit more money. Just like I think the best free agents at the wide receiver position might be Mecole Hardman and Allen Lazard. And if they're the best that you got in free agency, they can command more money than they normally would if there were some other high-profile free agents in that class. So I think with having all those extra names at the running back position, you will bring down the average salary, or at least you're gonna stabilize it. No one's gonna get a crazy position no one's gonna get a crazy contract at the running back position. So if you can sign Montgomery for a 2-year, $11 million, and maybe you can cut bait after the first year, then you do it, because I understand. And Danny, I 100% agree with you that you can draft a guy in the 3rd, 4th round and get productivity out of him. We've seen it. We've seen those guys that can just be a shot in the arm, and they were, the 100th overall pick or whatever. So, but maybe if you're able to bring Montgomery back on a good discounted price and you keep him and Herbert intact, that's one less position you got to waste a draft pick on. I don't want to say waste, but spend a draft pick on, because then you can go on another position of need.
But John, that's what I was saying. But that's what I'm saying. We don't have to create need. We don't have to create a need, because even with Cody White here, if he's not the snuff. But what I'm saying is, David, bro, at some point, why not pay guys for what they've done? He played on this full rookie contract without complaining.
I agree. I don't know if you should pay people for what they've done, though. I think you should pay them for what they're gonna do. I mean, you don't want to get caught in a contract where, let's just say, listen, running backs have a short shelf life. And if something would happen and in a high collision position, are you gonna really pay him $8 million a year, and all of a sudden he falls off or loses a step? I'm not in it for just saying, hey, thanks a lot. Here's a nice retirement package, or not a retirement, but you know what I mean.
John, you're right, but bro, true transparency. When Mitch Trubisky was figuring out stuff, David Montgomery was our best offensive weapon, bro.
Yeah, and they were a bad team.
But he was the offense. His yards speak for themselves. I think his average right now is over 6 yards per carry as a Bear.
Well, what did that get them though?
Is that the running back's fault, bro?
No, I'm just saying, if you're going to invest in the position because he was your offense and then you didn't win anything, why would you continue to invest in that position?
Well, this sounds a lot like the argument we had when we had Jordan Howard at running back. He was the only guy we had on offense. We didn't let him come back. We moved on. We found a guy in the draft.
And listen, I don't want this to turn into I don't want to bring David Montgomery back. That's not the case at all. What I'm saying is I'm not going to pay a guy because like he was really good a couple of years ago when he was like the only productive guy on the team a couple of years ago. If he comes at a good price, absolutely. Maybe even $7 million. I can understand that. I can swallow that. But I'm not going to go if he gets an $8 million contract or an $8.5 million contract from somebody else. I'm not gonna be like, well, the Bears need to go above and top that. They need to go at $9.5 million. I'm just not gonna do that. I mean, we'll see what they want to do, and I think Gaines is having connectivity problems, but we'll try to get him back in here as quickly as possible. But I think I just saw in the chat room, running back's probably the least of the concerns right now, so we don't need to talk 15, 20 minutes about the running back position because they did run the ball well this year. So. As we keep that, we're about an hour and 15 in. Is there anything else that we need to touch on before we start wrapping this up? Because now the real fun starts. This is when Danny gets into his prime now, and we're about ready to hit the pull start on Danny. He's going to be fluttering around until May. So anything else we need to talk about directly
Draft
after
on tap comes back this Wednesday, January 11th. Draft on tap.
We're gonna plug that away for sure. But we'll hopefully get Gaines back in here so we can sign off the proper way. But AC, anything that's on your mind before we start wrapping this up?
Something interesting I've seen a lot of guys talk about in the chat is an extra tight end. I talked about it earlier. I talked about Cole Kmet needed an upgrade there, and all of a sudden he exploded. Danny, do you think it's a smart idea to bring in, a Gesicki out of Miami or someone like that can go with him?
That's the guy.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having two tight ends that, obviously Cole Kmet, his strength is as a Y inline blocking tight end. He's expanded his game, like you said, this year in terms of, being a primary target for Justin Fields. I think he led the team today with 4 catches for 55 yards and a touchdown. So I think he's got 7 touchdowns this season. So obviously that's a big step there. But yeah, bring in a guy, who's more of a split, or what I call the joker position, where you can line him up as a receiver, you can line him up in the slot, you can move him around, put him out in the backfield, like for example, this kid Okwanko that the Titans got last year from Maryland. Kid's super athletic, doesn't have the build of a traditional tight end. He's probably like 6'2" or something like that, but he's a freak in terms of physique, and he's a guy who can get down a football field and threaten the football field. And a guy like that, whether it's Gesicki, whether it's an Evan Ingram, who's had a really terrific season with the Jaguars. I think he won a 1-year deal there with Jacksonville. He's a guy that brings you that explosiveness, a guy that can stretch the seam. Again, the more weapons you can get onto the football field, whether at the receiver, whether at tight end, or whether a running back or whatever, will only go ahead and help you and become more of an explosive offense. But yes, if you want to go with traditional, 2 tight ends, you can bring in a guy like a Gesicki and a Kmet, and now you have 2 guys that the defense has to worry about. Then obviously whatever happens at receiver and obviously then the backfield and Justin Fields. So now you're becoming a threat as offense. So yes, anytime there's a potential to bring in a weapon, a guy that can be a asset to the passing game, you got to think about it, especially if you're a team like the Bears that really has nothing in terms of assets on offense.
All right. Hey, Gaines, good to see you back in here. We're getting our parting shots in as we wrap up this 2022-2023 season of Bear football. What's on your mind? Parting shot message to everybody, because we are going to have a lot of special episodes coming into the offseason, obviously. But this is our last, scheduled, definitely going to happen after a post-game show kind of thing. So what do you got for us, Gaines, as we say goodbye?
It was fun getting heated. Kind of like not really. We've gotten heated before, but not really heated. But it was fun to get warmed up, and then my phone started acting silly. But nah, man, I'm just overall excited. Whatever it takes for the Bears to win the division, create playoff berth, I'm down. Danny, I don't want to make emotional decisions, as like Ryan Poles has done a good job of taking his emotions out of it and doing what's best for the organization. At the end of the day, we've been so mad before because we have done we're emotionally invested. John has blood invested into this team, and so at the end of the day, I want to win the Super Bowl. So I'm down for whatever it takes, but I'm stupid.
Oh, and he got caught right as he said, "Do whatever it takes."
Shut up.
And he's I think he's trying to FaceTime back. This is. Yeah, I think we can hear you, but you're frozen. You on there, Gaines?
Come on.
I don't think you can hear us. You with us, bud? This actually is the good epitome of the Bears season. We were there. It's not there, and now he's back. I think he's back.
Brother Gaines.
You with us, Gaines? And now you're muted or something. Yeah, no, you're muted out.
We can't hear you.
Although it did cut out at a good point where you said, "I'm going to do whatever it takes," and then everything went to hell. So I think that maybe you just made a deal with it. Like you can't. He's out. Okay, so maybe we'll get him back in. But before I kick it out to Danny to kind of show what the offseason is going to look like and what all these big sticking points are going to be. I just want to say this has been a fun season. Listen, it's not always easy talking about a team that you feel is probably going to lose almost every week. And especially when you're doing a show, you're like, we're talking about the same damn things over and over and over again. Okay, they can't block. Oh my God, they can't pass. Oh my God, they're playing guys that shouldn't be on the field. Like we can only say the same thing over and over again until it's just like, I don't even want to listen to me. What are you people doing here? So I do appreciate everyone that has been a part of this show, whether you're in the chat room in the live version or you're listening to the podcast version, the audio version, the video version. Just know that you are appreciated, because this was a hard season to get through. It did go fast, but it was a tough season to sled through just because of all of the losses, all of the poor product on the field. And we're hoping that we've invested what we need to invest it emotionally now. And then the other part of that karma is going to come back to us next year, where we're going to see a very different product on the field. And we're hoping that it turns around like that. So with that, before we close out, Danny, talk to us about Draft on Tap, because this is where Bears fans are going to get really invested now. They want to know what's going to happen. They want to know who they could potentially take at either 1 or they trade back in the top 10 or whatever. Talk about Draft on Tap and some of the big, I think the East-West Shrines coming up and the Senior Bowl and all this other stuff. What's going on?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, we just had a meeting, me, Neil, and Aldo this past week. Draft on Tap, our first show will be this Wednesday, January 11th at 8 p.m. Central. So we'll keep an eye on that. We'll hope you guys can jump on and join the chat. Obviously, as we always encourage everyone to come on. This is going to be a huge year for all the reasons we already talked about and covered in this show. So yeah, looking forward to that. We're gonna have some changes, big time changes to Draft on Tap. So we look forward to everyone kind of just listening and listen to and finding out what the changes are. Excited about that, and obviously excited for this offseason to see what the Bears do. I anticipate a lot of huge, impromptu shows put together because of some big acquisitions the Bears have made or big moves they've made. So that's what I'm anticipating this offseason as well. But the one thing that I am looking forward to whenever Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus have their season-ending press conferences, the one thing I wanted them to come out and say, they've hinted at it, they've dropped hints, and the sources have said that, other coaches said it. I want, because there's a lot of crap out there, guys, about drafting a quarterback, about using the first overall pick to pick a quarterback. And I refuse, I said it last time, I refuse to even acknowledge those suggestions, those questions, because to me, Justin Fields is a clear-cut franchise quarterback for this team. Is he there yet? Is he fully developed? No, but he's going to go into this offseason and he's going to become better. He's going to get better. So I have no questions there. But I want to see or Ryan Poles or Eberflus come on and say, yes, we are building this team around Justin Fields. Just plain and simple, period, done. No, we're looking at all positions, and he's probably going to end up doing that because as a GM, you got to make other teams think you could possibly take a quarterback, so they won't just say, oh, you know what, the Bears aren't taking a quarterback, so we don't have to worry about the Bears. So I think he's going to come on and talk GM talk, if you will. But I would love just him to say, you know what, Justin Fields is our quarterback. We've loved the improvement we've seen in him. We know there's more room for growth. We know there's more room for improvement, but he is a guy we are building this franchise around, period. Done. So that would kill all these talks about, oh, look at CJ Stroud. Oh, look at, Will Levis. Or look at this guy and this guy. That's the one thing I would wish would happen, but we'll hold on and see if that actually happens. But yeah, Draft on Tap, guys, starts Wednesday. We are going to be diving into these prospects, diving into the Bears in terms of their draft needs and all that stuff. So please join us. And as always, we always encourage you guys to participate and let us know who you want us to scout, break down for you on these shows upcoming. So looking forward to that for sure.
Can't wait for that. Gaines, before your phone cuts out again, give us like a 20-second outro.
20-second outro, real quick. The Bears are good. I love them.
Hey, that's what I like to hear. AC, I didn't give you a chance to say goodbye. So what do you got?
Yeah, well, Barfly Tailgate, we're gonna have a couple of special shows this offseason. I spoke about it this morning. We're having Ryan Kirkland Billings' cousin Andrew Billings is a Las Vegas Raider and future free agent. We're gonna have an interview with him. We're gonna come on and have a draft special, and we'll probably have a free agency special. We'll put out information for those, when the times come closer. And I've been invited on Danny Shimon's show with Draft on Tap, so I'll have to go on with those guys. And if you're looking for guys that I want you to scout, man, I probably got a list about 100 long, man. I've already been doing mock drafts and everything.
And they're all from Kentucky, by the way, guys. They're all from Kentucky.
That's fine.
No, not all of them. Not all of them. I'm a little biased on a lot of my guys, but I mean that's just me. But that's what I got going on this offseason, man. And I'll let you go ahead and close this out, John, if you want to.
Hey, John, before you close this out, Brother John, guys, I'm truly, first of all, shout out to Aldo. He is the wizard behind the curtain at the Barroom Network. It's been a freaking awesome season. I mean, it's so much happening within the network. You all have no idea how much Aldo appreciates the retweets, the likes. You guys coming into every shows, showing love for all the Chicago sports. It means a lot. Aldo thinks tirelessly about how he can support the fans even more. And I got his back on it 1,000%. So does John, so does Danny, so does AC and all the shows. Just like whenever you guys have a minute, give Otto a shout out on Twitter, bro. Like this dude truly, this is his life. I mean, he has a family. He truly has a family. Is that Bellissimo? What's up, Bellissimo?
Yeah.
What's up, dog? What's up, dog? But give Aldo a shout out, man. Like he truly takes time away from his family, as we all do, to put on great content for you guys. And Danny Shim is going to be killing it all off season for the Draft on Tap. And last thing, John, as of Thursday, officially, I have been announced at a high school here in Baltimore, Maryland, as the performance enhancement specialist, strength and conditioning coach for a ranked state for a football team. We have a top 5 quarterback in the state and a top 5 defensive tackle. And it's been a blessing beyond my deserving. And truly going to help these kids. I'm going to help them get your attention, Danny. I'm going to help them get to college so they can get your attention. But that's what I'll be doing this offseason outside of my own personal things. I will be going to Africa, as you guys know, is what help those kids over there. But John, Danny, our first season together, I mean, I love you guys. It's been super, super dope. Mr. Trubisky's great.
You had to just put that little exclamation point in there.
I think John could probably find you a couple of Trubisky jerseys at the clearance store in Pittsburgh.
I'm joking.
I'm taking us out of here. And by the way, before we cut things out, just to answer, I think Barlisa will put it in the chat, over/under on trade downs in the first round, 1.5. Over. They're going to make a movie about it. He's going to trade down 3 times, 45 picks. They're going to be picking. They're going to have 6 first-round picks in 2043. You're going to see it anyway. But thank you so much for tuning into Bear Football. We truly appreciate it. A lot of shows going on. We're going to be doing special Buffone 55s throughout the off season, whether it's free agency, the draft, or a big signing like some of us were talking about. Potentially, there could be a breaking news like when the Khalil Mack thing down. I believe we actually did one when the Andy Dalton news came down too, but that was more of satire inspired than anything else. So once again, whether you're listening to the live version, the podcast version, the video version, or the audio version, thank you so much for tuning into the Barroom Network on Bear Football. For Aaron Curran, AC, Tyler Ellis, Gaines, and Danny, just the draft legend, Shimon, we appreciate you. I'm John Buffone. We'll see you next time.